everybody, welcome to WTF Hammer Underworlds. So I'm going to be continuing my review series for Season 3, this time looking at Skaeth's Wild Hunt. We're basically on the hunt to find and kill anything that sort of defiles nature, mostly the Beastmen, and I guess they ended up in Beastgrave. It doesn't really say so in their lore. Anyway, I'm going to be doing in this video what I always do, which is look at this warband's fighter cards, their faction-specific cards, and then be rating them and compare them to all the other warbands that I have rated thus far, which is 19 other ones. So if you guys want to go check out those videos, you can. There are hours of content that you could overview if you're interested. So anyway, let's start by looking at this warband's fighter cards. And these guys are pretty interesting. There's 5 units total, and their Inspire mechanic is basically that in end phase they have a charge token, so that's pretty cool. It does encourage aggression. These guys also have lots of ranged attackers, but I'll get to that in a second. I'm going to start by looking at Skaeth, the Huntsman, their leader, who is a hunter, who, I guess his main attack technically is the kicking hooves, because he can keep doing that. It's range 1, 3 swords, 2 damage, getting scything, which is pretty cool when he's inspired. But he also has the Javelin of the Hunt, which is very nice. Similar to Jagathra's Javelin from Godsworn Hunt, but better, landing on 2 hammers or 3 hammers when inspired, and doing a damage, but an extra damage when used in a charge. But this thing can only be used one time. It gives Skaeth some insane range with 8 range basically because of her 5 movement. Also goes up to 2 shields when inspired and has 4 wounds, so pretty tough, pretty reliable, pretty hard to take out of action when inspired, of course. Next there's Carthane Huntcaller, who's also a hunter, who's also a spellcaster. Wizard level 1 until inspired, then becoming wizard level 2. Decent range attack, which is called a wand, even though it's a melee weapon. Hitting on 2 hammers for 2 damage, then going to 3 damage when inspired. And I've written the errata of Carthaon special ability, which is the Hunting Horn, which as an action allows Carthaon to put a horn counter on this card, and when there are 1 or more horn counters on this card, you can reroll any number of dice in the next attack action made by a friendly fighter's attack action and then remove the horn counters. So it allows you to kind of spontaneously decide if you want to re-roll a bunch of dice and then you just remove that horn counter. So very nice, although it does take an action to use. Starts at 4 movement, goes to 5 movement, always has 2 dodge, which is nice, and 3 wounds, which is not exceptional, but better than 2. Next is Ligane, their pet, who is basically a lion, has 5 range, gets 2 dodge when inspired, only 2 wounds though. Pretty accurate melee attack, but only when inspired, 3 swords and ensnare, but can't get attack action upgrades or hold objectives because it's an animal. Next there's Althane, who is a hunter, who has a short bow that lands on hammers, which is pretty nice, and gets ensnare when inspired. Going up to 5 movement inspired, has 3 wounds, so pretty durable. All these guys are pretty durable actually, except for the lion. And finally, Shiok or Shiach, the hunter, who has a good melee attack, especially when inspired. He becomes pretty accurate. So the accuracy of these guys improves significantly when they get inspired. He gets 3 hammers and cleave, 2 damage, and can re-roll 1 dice on defense rolls, which isn't so great considering that this is actually the lowest defense unit with only 1 dodge. Altheon also has some pretty bad defense, which I may have forgotten to mention. But 3 wounds, so fairly tough. So that does it for these fighter cards, which have a few pros, many pros, many pros. They have some special combat abilities when inspired: cleave, ensnare, scything. They have the Hunter Horn special ability. They have amazing movement, practically 5 across the board. They have a spellcaster. They have generally good defense. They have ranged attackers. They have the Hunter keyword. They have fairly high wounds. They have a reasonable Inspire mechanic. You just have to charge and I guess wait, but at least it's controllable. And they have a medium model number with 5, so that gives them a lot of possible options each round. And cons, there's not a ton, but they have low-ish damage. But it's not bad damage. They do have 3 and 2 damage for most of their units, which is good. They also can't become inspired in the first round, which can be a bit of a bummer, and also forces you to put them into kind of a vulnerable spot when they charge and then just sort of wait for the next round to inspire. And, being a medium model number, they have some vulnerable units, but really only the lion. Everybody else has 3 wounds, which makes them pretty durable. And that does it for the fighter cards. So next we're going to be looking at their objective cards, starting with their score immediate cards. First one's Kurnoth's Snare. Scores immediately when an enemy fighter is pushed into a lethal hex, worth 1 glory. So pretty specific, not super easy to pull off. I'm going to give this a B. Next there's Ritual Kill. Score this immediately when your warband takes an enemy fighter standing in the same hex as an objective out of action. So also quite specific, only worth 1 glory. I'm going to give this a B as well. Rundown. Score this immediately when a friendly fighter takes an enemy fighter out of action with an attack action made as part of a charge. Worth 1 glory. So this definitely fits within their style, so I'm giving this an A because these guys are going to be charging constantly. Run through. Score this immediately when your leader takes an enemy fighter out of action. And Skaeth is pretty badass, so odds are pretty good. I'm going to give this an A. And Soul Binding. Score this immediately when your warband casts a spell. Worth 1 glory. I'm giving this an S. I was tempted to give it an A, but I mean, as long as you put one spell in your power deck and you cast it, this thing gets pulled off. But unfortunately, they don't have a spell attack action, so it's not quite as amazing as the Curse Breakers version of this card, for example. But I mean, I still gave it an S. I like the card. Anyway, that does it for the score immediately cards, the Surge cards. Let's take a look at the score in the end phase cards. Starting with Aspects of Kurnoth. Score this in end phase if all surviving friendly fighters are inspired. Worth 1. So I'm going to give this a B, because it's probably not going to happen in the first round, and it's only worth 1. Next is Cry of the Wild. Score this in end phase if a friendly Carthane made a Hunting Horn action in the previous phase, and there's a surviving friendly Carthane. So you basically have to spend an action to have Carthane blow the horn, and then hopefully Carthane survives. Only worth 1. I'm giving it a B. Next are Gifts of Kurnoth. Score this in an end phase if 3 or more surviving friendly fighters each have 1 or more upgrades. Worth 1. I'm giving this a C. I just don't think it's very good. Next, there's Hunt's End Hybrid. Score this in an end phase if an enemy fighter with a wounds characteristic of 4 or greater is taken out of action, or your warband holds 3 or more objectives. Worth 2. So very versatile. Allows you to put this in your deck and then score it through completely different means. So I'm giving this an S. Very likely to get pulled off at some point. Purifying Rites. Score this in end phase if your warband holds all objectives in 1 or more players' territory. Worth 2. Also giving this an S. If you place all your objectives in enemy territory, maybe destroy one in your territory in case the enemy dumps one in yours, this becomes a very easy score that only takes 1 activation to pull off. Safety and Swiftness. Score this in end phase if 3 or more surviving fighters each have 1 or more move or charge tokens. Worth 1. So very likely to get pulled off, so I'm giving it an A. Only worth 1 though, so not worth an S. Slay the Corrupted. Score this in end phase if 3 or more enemy fighters are out of action. Worth 2. I'm giving this an A because this warband is very geared towards aggression, so I think this card is not so difficult to achieve. Obviously, though, it depends on if you're facing a 3-unit warband or not, though. So anyway, that does it for the objective cards, which typically promote killing enemies on feature tokens with the leader or just in general, charging, casting spells, holding objectives, using the Hunting Horn, and upgrading friendly fighters. Alright, so let's take a look at this warband's power cards. Starting with their ploys, there is Fleet of Foot. Choose a friendly fighter that has no move or charge tokens and make a move action with them. So pretty nice out-of-turn move. I'm going to give this an A. Hunt in Concert. Choose up to 2 friendly fighters and push each of them 1 hex. So very nice. I'm giving that an A. Pushing 2 friendly fighters is always great. That could be an S. Definitely way better than Sidestep. Next is Pounce. Push a friendly fighter up to 3 hexes so that they're adjacent to an enemy fighter that has 1 or more wound tokens. So a bit circumstantial. Also kind of forces where you get pushed. I'm giving it an A though because it does push 3, which is nice. Retrieve Javelin. Allows Skaeth to get a second Javelin throw, which is nice as well. I'm going to give this a B, but could be worth an A because his Javelin is pretty badass. Song of Swiftness. Friendly fighters have +1 move, and this persists until the end of the round, or unless Carthane is taken out of action. So +1 move to all your guys for the whole round is pretty nice. Brings them up to 6 move across the board pretty much. Definitely a good card. I gave it an A. Strike in Concert. The first range 1 or 2 attack action made by a friendly fighter in the next activation has +1 damage for each supporting fighter. So definitely works well if you're planning on swarming, which I'm not sure if you necessarily would because you do have some rangy guys here. I gave it a B. +1 damage is a bit more reliable when it doesn't rely on the support mechanic. Next, there's Swift as the Wind. Choose a friendly fighter that has 1 or more move tokens and remove one of these tokens. So definitely a nice anti-transfixing stare card. I'm giving it a B though, because these guys will tend to charge and not move. And that does it for the ploys. So spells, we have Binding Wind, cast on a focus, and if it's cast, choose an enemy fighter within 4 hexes of the caster and give that fighter a move token. So a faction-specific transfixing stare with more range, relying on successfully casting the spell, of course, but I'm giving it an A because it's very nice. Next is Healing Breeze, also costs a focus. If cast, pick a hex within 4 hexes of the caster and heal 1 to any fighter in that hex and in hexes adjacent to that. So if you have some clustered units, this becomes a very effective healing spell. I'm giving it a B. Maybe it's worth an A, but only heals 1, not heals 2, so I don't know. Pretty easy to cast, though. It's probably worth an A. Next is Might of Kurnoth. Also costs a focus. If cast, choose a friendly fighter. Their range 1 and 2 attack actions have +1 damage, and this spell persists until the end of the round, so nice damage boost, lasts for the whole round. I'm going to give this an A. And that does it for the Gambits, which typically promote covering ground through either pushing, increasing movement, or removing move tokens. Also getting an extra Javelin. These cards also promote support attacking, impairing enemy movement, healing allies, and increasing damage. So let's take a look at this warband's upgrade cards, starting with Battle Cry. Restricted to hunters. As an action, remove all guard tokens from adjacent enemy fighters, and push all adjacent enemy fighters up to 1 hex. So kind of cool, an anti-guard token thing, which is pretty unique. I'm going to give it a B though, because it does take an action, which is pretty costly. Next is Divine Strength. This fighter's attack actions have knockback 1, so not super exceptional. I'm going to give this a C. There's Eye of Kurnoth, restricted to hunters as well. This fighter's attack actions have +1 dice. If the target is a quarry, this fighter's attack actions also have Ensnare. So the +1 dice is nice. The Ensnare is amazing, but not super easy to make enemy targets a quarry. I am going to give this an S though, because that +1 dice applies to basically the whole warband besides their lion. Next is Fast Shot, restricted to Alphaeon. After this fighter's activation in which they made a range 3 attack action, they can make another range 3 attack action, so a nice double shot with the bow. Pretty cool. I'm going to give this a B. Also works very nice with Stand and Shoot, although I'm pretty sure that's about to get rotated out. Great Strides, +2 move, giving it an S, gives these guys 7 movement, which is just insane. Hail Charm, restricted to hunters, so the majority of the warband. And it basically is damage reduction 1 to a minimum of 1. I'm going to give that A. Might also be worth an S. I mean, it's just very nice. Hunting Aspect, unique to Ligane, basically just kind of brings him up to par with the rest of the warband. Huge movement, really good defense, better wounds. I'm giving it a B, only because I don't know how worthwhile it really is to buff him, because he still only does 1 damage. Kurnoth's Mark, restricted to hunters. You can reroll 1 dice in the defense roll when this fighter is the target of an attack action. And as a reaction, after a friendly fighter's attack action, that takes an adjacent enemy fighter out of action. If this card is in your hand, give that friendly fighter this upgrade. So you can basically equip it for free when a friendly fighter takes an adjacent enemy unit out of action with an attack, and then it allows them to become more accurate with their attacks. I'm going to give it a B. The reroll on the defense is nice. It's also nice that it can be equipped for free, but a +1 defense is obviously better. Their Shield Slash, unique to Skaeth, gives him a hard attack, 2 hammer, 3 damage. So I'm going to give that a B. Might be worth an A though, because it is a nice step up, although he does have Scything with his other attack, which is also really nice. And finally, Vicious Dart, which is a spell attack action for Carthane, doing 1 damage, having Ensnare, and doing an extra damage on a crit. I'm going to give this an A because it's a very nice spell attack action upgrade. And that does it for this warband's cards. So the upgrades typically promote pushing enemies, weakening enemy defense, increasing accuracy, improving movement, an out of turn attack action, reducing enemy damage, a spell attack action, getting knockback, buffing the tiger, and some pretty good weapon upgrades. And here's the full overview. So they have nice objective cards, honestly. They're Scorn the End Phase cards specifically. They have some nice upgrades. Gambits are pretty good, not super exceptional, but they do have nice fighter cards. So that in mind, I'm going to rate this warband. And my first point in this overview is that these guys have very high movement, and they're also encouraged to charge, which means they can pretty much hit enemies wherever they are, especially with their range attackers. So like no one's really safe against these guys. They could charge, they could hit whoever they want, generally speaking. And their damage is not exceptional though, which is unfortunate, but they do have many high movement models, and they can attack frequently, so you know the ping damage, I guess, can just add up through the multiple charges. They also have an easy inspire mechanic. It is easy to inspire these guys, but unfortunately they cannot inspire in the first round, which could leave these guys vulnerable after a charge. And finally, they have solid cards in general. Like I mentioned, specifically their objective cards, their upgrade cards. Gambits are okay. They're well-rounded in aggression and objective holding play. Very solid. I am ranking this warband as an A, but they're one of the better ranked A warbands. I actually am putting them right after Stormsire's Curse Breakers in this ranking list. A little bit above Zarbags, quite a bit above Grashrax Despoilers. They're just superior. And this is basically my grid so far. So I'm going to keep adding to this grid as I rank the next 6 Beastgrave warbands. Then eventually I'm going to do the same thing for Dire Chasm when those things eventually get released and when I get there, because making these videos takes time. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any thoughts or suggestions, please comment below. In the description, I'm going to be putting a link to a balancing video that I made for these guys to show how I'd recommend Games Workshop modify them in order to, I guess, balance them out around the perfect tier so that everybody's sort of at the same competitive level. Obviously, that's an opinion thing, but if you're interested in that sort of thing, you can check that video out and all my other balancing videos as well. I thank you once again for watching this video, and I hope you have a nice day.